here. Lindsey, welcome. How are you today?
Hey, Lindsey.
I'm doing well. Good to talk to you guys.
Good to talk to you as well. So thanks for joining us. Tell us what's going on at Colorado Rising Action.
Well, we're still working on letting everyone in Colorado know how bad Proposition CC, which will be on this November's ballot, is. But before we get into the details of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about state spending, because it's really important when when the state is asking us to give up more of our tax money and they're, telling us it'll go to one place, we should talk about what the state spending actually is. So in 2009, this is one statistic that's very telling. In 2009, our state spending was about $3,700 per person, and we had about 5 million people in the state. Now, 10 years later, 2019, we're spending about $5,300 per person.
That's quite an increase.
Wow.
It really is. I think that's really important. We're spending so much more per person, and that's not just, an increase in total spending. That's why are we spending so much more per person? What does each person get? And we clearly aren't getting better roads. We clearly aren't getting a better education system. So where is that money actually going?
No, so what you're saying is our increase per person has increased, but yet I'm still driving over potholes that ruin wheels and tires and everything else on your vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. And so Proposition CC is asking us to give up our tax refunds in order to pay for transportation. But we've gotten this before in the form of, Proposition C many years ago, and it just hasn't happened. They're using transportation and education, sort of holding them hostage to try to get us to say, okay, we'll let you increase our taxes again.
Yeah, they never seem to fix either one.
Exactly.
The roads are always in disrepair, and the children always need more money.
Oh, man, we can dump more money into education till we're blue in the face, and, the reality is until we fix the real problem, we're not going to fix the problem.
That's right. And if we're looking at roads nationwide, there's a study that came out recently saying that Colorado has the 36th worst state highways in the country, which is just unbelievable. It's really sad, and it's between that using transportation and education, and then the ballot language, which we can talk about for Proposition CC. It's really an uphill battle. I mean, there's polling that is still putting us under 50% for passing. So we feel pretty good about it, but because the ballot language, we really need to continue to let people know what Proposition CC is, what giving up your tax refunds permanently would mean. My prediction is it's not going to mean our roads automatically get better.
So do we have the ballot language yet? Do we know exactly what the ballot is going to say? And what does it say? Do you have it in front of you by chance?
Yeah. So the highlights are, it starts off without raising taxes, which is just off the bat not true. The state is keeping your tax money and spending it. That's a tax increase. So it starts off without raising taxes to better fund public schools and higher education. And then they go on and talk about, within a balanced budget, with an annual audit, they sort of throw everything in there. But the fact that it starts without raising taxes is very confusing, I think, for voters in Colorado.
Fully agree.
Yep.
Fully agree. So let me ask you this, because this is something that I continue to hear from other individuals on a regular basis is, what else do we need to do to continue to message? Because what I'm hearing when it comes to polling, we talked about this the other day, even with the gentleman from Magellan, Andy Payton, I did. When it comes to our messaging, right now, it seems like if we message well, people that understand Tabor are against CC. Those, though, that don't really understand Tabor and don't realize what's happening, even to my, which I just don't understand, to my bewilderment, they're for it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing as far as messaging, to your point, the people who don't understand Tabor, is just to sort of leave that out of the equation. That's part of, if you just have 10 seconds to talk about what's happening, don't get so much into Tabor. Just talk about, Proposition CC is a tax increase. The government is keeping more of your money and spending it on...
I understand what you're saying, but hear me out on this. Mm-hmm. The problem is, the way the people that are for CC are pushing it is this is what they're saying. Dan, the tax dollars you're already spending, we're just going to keep, and you don't get a refund, so really there's no increase. Even though you and I, Lindsey, know there's an increase, to the average, not-so-mathematician voter out there, what I just told Dan sounds pretty good. And they're like, oh, if I can get all these benefits out of it and I don't pay any more money, I'm good. So somehow we've got to combat that and say, well, no, time out. This really is, to your point, Lindsey, a tax increase. And here's why.
Yeah, especially when they start running the ads during drive time and everybody's sitting stuck in traffic.
Proposition CC will not increase taxes.
I can already tell you that's what the ad's going to say.
Alleviate traffic and all that kind of stuff.
Are you tired of sitting in congestion right now? Guess what? Prop CC's your answer. Yeah. It will not raise taxes. We'll just use the money you're already spending to fix the road you're driving on. That's the commercial right there, right?
Yeah. So a couple of points. I think I would point out that there's been a few other. So we are spending $3 billion more a year since 2005 on transportation, and that doesn't include general fund increases. Those are fees from referendum fee, faster fees, and the hospital provider fees, all of which were billed as you won't be sitting in traffic anymore only if you pass this. It's going to fix everything. So between those three things, we're putting $3 billion more per year into transportation, plus general fund increases. And the other point I would say is when Proposition C passed, it had a sunset, so it was temporary in some ways, other ways not so much. But what the Democrats are saying is that money was spent on what they said it was going to go towards health care and education. But what actually ended up happening is spending in other areas increased by twice as much as spending in those areas. So yes, that money did go into education and healthcare, but then they took that money out of the general fund and spent it elsewhere. So, overall actual spending on roads, on education is not guaranteed to happen.
Yeah.
It's just.
I'm with you.
Yep.
I know it's a little harder to explain, and it doesn't sound as good as their sound bites that they're putting out, but we just have to keep hammering that home that there's no guarantees. The money, our refund money isn't even guaranteed. So how can you say you're going to increase teacher salary on money that you don't know will be there? How can you say that there's dedicated funding for roads when you don't know how much the refunds will actually be?
Yeah, these are all great points, Lindsey. And I'm just trying to think about, okay, so how do we say this in 15 seconds? How do we say this in a counter ad?
In a soundbite. They're going to work off sound bites like I just did. We have to do the same thing. How do we do that?
Right. The problem is that they sound, if you don't get into the details, they sound like completely contradictory sound bites. But the soundbite is, it's a tax increase. It's a blank check to state government.
And that might be it right there. It's a tax increase. It's a blank check to state government.
Okay, I'm going to be devil's advocate.
Go ahead.
Why?
Why is it a blank check?
Yes. Because
we're permanently giving up our potential, right now, over the next 3 years, it's projected to be $1.6 billion in tax refunds that we would get back. But since this is permanent, we're giving an unknown amount to the government that we should, right now, under the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, be. Okay, so here's how the soundbite
here's how that soundbite should say. Bear with me here, and I realize we're running out of time, but really quick, let me just do some quick math. So I got to turn the calculator sideways for these big numbers. So 1.6 billion over how long?
The next 3 years.
Okay, and how many people in Colorado that pay taxes roughly? You got any idea?
Oh, I think our population's like 5.5 million.
So let's figure there's, half of those working, Dan? Is that a fair number?
I'd say.
Okay, so let's look at 2.5 million people. So basically, this is what I would say. That's roughly a $650 refund people would get. My point is this. People don't know math. So if we in our sound bites do not do the math for them, they'll never know the numbers you're talking about. They hear 1.6 billion, and frankly, Lindsey, and I'm guessing my math is probably way off because I don't think we even have 2.5 million workers in Colorado, so I'm probably way off. We need a pretty exact number as to what each particular tax return would actually get as a refund if we allowed, if we kept going the same way we're going right now and we got that 1.6 billion back. People need real numbers is my point.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that number is out there. I know this year it's projected to be 575 million, but I don't have the number per person that would be off the top of my head.
So my suggestion is, and I'm trying to type and talk at the same time, which I should not do because I don't do very well at that. I'm not one of those guys that can do both. But the one thing that I would recommend and I just know this from being in the retail world and even consulting businesses today, the average retail, person on the street, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to be down on anyone. Please, nobody think of it this way. But Lindsey, they don't know math. So if we do not do the math for them, they just don't. For example, one of the first rules in outside of clothing, when it comes to what you do in a business, is you don't offer percentage discounts. The reason why percentage discounts don't typically work in the business world or in the retail world is because people can't do math. They don't know 10% from 15% from 20%. So you give dollars off because people can relate to that. They can't relate to what 15% is. They can't put that in their mind. And you know what? When it comes to $1.6 billion, they hear that big number, but they have no idea what that means in their own pocket over the next 3 years.
Yeah, I would say even if it's $50, I still think I spend that better than the state does.
Well, and I think that's your soundbite. We need to focus on that. And here's my point with everybody listening, those of you that are in marketing that are thinking about all this and so on. You need real numbers, real dollars that people can look at, relate to, and say, yeah, I want that money. I don't want them having it because I can spend it better than they can. Make sense?
Yeah. Yep, I think you're right, and we'll keep trying to do that with on all the radio stations and everyone we talk to, and hopefully everyone listening will do that too.
Yeah, I think that's the great tagline too. We can spend it better than they can.
We can spend it better. You can, and I would be specific. You can spend X dollars better than they can.
Yep.
You can spend $650 better than they can, and keep in mind that's for every taxpayer in the state. People now can equate to that and say, wait, 650 times 2 million taxpayers, that's a chunk of change. Yeah, it is. Point taken.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a quote from the Gazette recently did an editorial where they said, we can give away health care to able-bodied adults, but we can't keep our roads safe, which is a way to say, our priorities and funding in the state legislature are not what I think. They're not spending money efficiently on roads, and it's kind of out of touch with what we need.
Well said. Okay. Great stuff. And by the way, if you ever want to talk about any of this stuff off air, Lindsey, pick our brains, whatever, feel free. Let us know. Send me an email. I'd love to help. Again, I want to get this message out. I want to see this money stay in our pockets, not end up in some politician's pocket, which basically then gets used against us anyways.
Absolutely, and thank you for talking about it so much.
Really appreciate it, Lindsey. Thanks, you so
Lindsey.
much. Real quick, let's take one more call from Ann before we take a break.